I love games that offer a challenge. Those games that make you want to go over and over for endless hours. The type of games that at first offer a difficulty that seems impossible, but with trial and error there is a glimpse of hope of actually being completed. I love games that are tough, but fair. Above that, I love games that just scream personality, when they experiment with the animation and the visuals to avoid repetition and instead outshine their competition by their bold and innovative artistry. I love playing a game and not having the need to question the things that are happening on the screen because it has done such a good job immersing you into its universe. For this and many other reasons I'm about to cover up is why I love Cuphead. Cuphead. That 2017 game that took the gaming world for a spin and gave us what I think was a refreshing and nostalgic experience at the time. And also a little reminder that games aren't always going to be holding your hand. I know that I'm somewhat late when it comes to discussing Cuphead, but in all seriousness, where do you see another game like this? Where do you see such passion to the animation and so much creativity being delivered? I don't feel like Cuphead is being talked enough for the mark that it left on the gaming world. For a game to be as mechanically simple as jump, duck, run, and shoot, to have such a high skill ceiling is something impressive to think about. Not only that, but 2D games with these exact options for movement already existed before Cuphead, but to my opinion, none have been as big of an impact. And it all depends on Cuphead's animation style. While sure, we've seen the release of stylized characters like the acclaimed Mickey Mouse into video games with his cartoony look, or also other indie characters trying this stylized form like Ben the Enigma Machine, or a more recent one, the first-person shooter Mouse, that has such crazy combination of 2D and 3D graphics. None of them are able to replicate that feeling they are trying to achieve, 1930s style cartoons. That early era of animation where characters seem to have loose arms, wild expressions, and insane movements that us humans couldn't ever replicate. The 1930s animation era holds a very special place in my heart. It was a time where anything was possible, and while that is still true, to think that people had such creativity to make wacky characters full of life and personality is what makes me so interested in this style of animation. You wouldn't question why there were chairs as characters to represent a part of their story, or that everyone in Popeye's adventures bounced to the rhythm of the background song. These cool little details that characterize so much the 1930s animations are what draw my attention so much, and most importantly is what Cuphead perfectly captures at what makes this style so unforgettable. Cuphead's entire game is hand drawn, which, to start off, is an insane way to render your game. To think that every single frame in this game was hand drawn just to mimic that wacky animation we had back in the day, instead of using fancy softwares that could have eased the animation process by a lot, it just shows how much appreciation the studio Moldenhauer has for this era. But it's not just about the technique. Everyone can have hand-drawn animations for their games that mimic how cartoons were made back in the day. It's a lengthy process, but it's doable. The key difference with Cuphead is the reason for the character's existence. It's the feeling or the emotion that you give the character that matters most. And Cuphead understands that fully by having insane character ideas back to back. 2 boxing frogs that run a cruise ship full of mosquitoes? Sure, why not? A veggie trio consisting of a potato that spits dirt balls, an onion that cries, and a carrot that will shoot beans from his third eye? Honestly, I'll take it. A carnival clown that throughout his whole fight resembles the many carnival games and even turned into one himself? Alright, I think I've seen it all. I'm in love with this game. These bosses that I've been mentioning sound crazy when you first think of them, mainly because of the question of how can you make them work in any other game environment without them looking out of place? Answer is, you can't. This type of ideas are what characterize so much that style of animation, where everything can have a life and a reason of why they do certain things. Do you think that the onion has a crying attack just because they needed an attack? Absolutely not. Onions in real life are associated to make us tear up, and Studio Moldenhauer saw this single particular thing about a vegetable and decided to make it its whole personality by the power of exaggeration. The Onion is the perfect example of properly honoring the 1930s cartoon era, where anything made sense if you just put your mind into it. And it's not just The Onion alone. As I've mentioned, frogs running a mosquito cruise ship, a crazy carnival clown turning into the games himself, a queen bee leading her army of bees, a huge bird stuck in a wooden birdhouse, a genie representing many facets of this myth, pyramids, treasures, and even traveling through ruins. These and so many more characters that are presented in our playthrough could all just be characters that appeared on a cartoon back in the early days, and I wouldn't even notice because of how well they are animated and how much expression they have been given. And I know that I said that most of their attacks are an exaggerated quirk they have in real life, but sometimes they don't even make sense, which adds more into this nostalgic feeling where sometimes crazy things happen because they do. Overall, Cuphead manages to capture 3 important points for this 1930s animation: creativity, nostalgia, and unpredictability. It's a love letter to a time where anything was possible on the screen, and the only rule that existed was to break all of them. And while I think it's great that the game world is getting hyper-realistic graphics and outstanding shaders that makes the experience more realistic, in my opinion, the fact that a game can have this amount of different character bosses, all hand-drawn and all so full of originality, makes it one of the best looking games I've ever seen in my life. I know it's crazy to say that, but come on. It's impossible to not admire all of the work it went to create such a chaotic but perfectly balanced world that is Cuphead. To top this amazing characteristic of animation, I got to say that the music just adds up more to this nostalgic adventure. Having every composition of this game to fall into the genre of big band jazz and feature sounds of ragtime and swing styles, this just adds more to the feeling of 1930s cartoons. These amazing pieces of music combined with stunning and beautiful pieces of art and animation present a wonderful and unique experience. An experience that feels like stepping into an era from 90 years ago. But hey, games aren't just an interesting open world to look around. We got to have at least one accomplishment, right? Well, let me introduce to you all the second thing Cuphead has executed perfectly: the gameplay. Cuphead, well, it's a video game after all, right? Its gameplay needs to be, if not the most important thing that it has to offer. Sure, the visuals of this world are top quality with how they capture the feeling of all cartoons. But what about the gameplay? Not to make expectations for myself, but these drawings just scream like this is going to be a super exciting adventure filled with crazy characters that will give me many tasks to discover this world. And overall, a pretty fun and normal experience. Like, look at this guy, Goopy Legrand. I'm sure he's going to be a lovable character just by the way he looks.
A brawl is surely brutal. And begin.
Yeah, Cuphead's gameplay is tough. Really tough. Cuphead's whole gimmick is basically a boss rush game where you keep encountering the insane wacky characters that I've been talking about. Goopy Legrand, Cockney Carnation, Werner Werman, Captain Brinybeard, yada 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 yada. You get the point, right? But from the very first boss of your choice, either the Root Pact or Goopy Legrand, you suddenly realize that after the tutorial, this game has left you on your own. You get the tutorial on all the mechanics that are on the game, sure, but now it's time to actually polish them with the bosses. Cuphead is straight to the point. It sets instantly what the whole point of this game is, and also sets how difficult it really is. Even though these are the first bosses of the very first world, for a new player they can be hours and hours of trial and error. I can say now confidently that Goopy Legrand is no threat for me, but when I first started this game, I remember I spent quite an awful amount of time on this boss specifically, and it didn't get any better after that one. Hildeberg, Baroness Bon, Calamaria, Dr. Mahoney, Crow, Devil, Baby the Captain, Wally, Jimmy the Wally Wade, Sally. I think I think you get my point, right? With all of the bosses being so different creative-wise, having their own quirks and their own personality, it also means that every single boss in this game is going to be different gameplay-wise. I mean, after all, this game is all around them, so they needed to make them a bit different in a way so it doesn't seem repetitive. But my god, does it seem like entering a new world when you've spent many hours against one boss, learning the attacks and finding a way of dodging every single one of them, just to have another one waiting for me after this one that will humble me and make me learn a new set of attacks with new pacing and new ways to make my life more miserable. Yeah, I'm just kidding about that last part. It's a video game, bro, like, chill. But seriously, when I first played Cuphead, I didn't believe all of the people that said that this game was as difficult as Dark Souls and that the only solution to beat this game is to literally get good. But they couldn't have been more right. These bosses are difficult, tough, and full of surprises, but they are never unfair. Let me make this clear. Cuphead's gameplay from start to finish will always test your skills with the basic mechanics that I've mentioned earlier. It doesn't go below that point, and it goes way beyond that point. From the very first boss that the game offers, it sets instantly clear that this is not your ordinary 2D adventure that offers some difficulty. This is a total different experience, with every boss just putting the skill level even higher than the last one. But the bosses never pull off an insane move that only skilled players are able to dodge. It will never make something look unfair or spam a move for you to lose. While sure, each boss fight is clearly staged for you to fail in the beginning many times, and it may even change the order of the attacks just for it to not feel the same every time and make you fail in some other ways. As these fails keep happening, you slowly but surely start learning the patterns of the attacks that are on your way. You start to notice how the boss moves around the arena and how his projectiles work. While sure, the boss can change faces and now there is a new pattern to learn or a new threat to take care of, it never feels unfair, but more so feels challenging. And the responsible for this single feeling is the one and only death card. This little death card that you get when dying to a boss fight is a key factor when it comes to the engagement of the player, because in our boss fights we don't have a way of telling how far or how close we were to beat the boss. We just have to continue on and study the patterns of the attacks while trying to survive. But maybe you had bad luck and get hit 3 times in a row. This is where you get this little death card that tells you how much progress you made in the boss fight. Maybe you did so much that you want to give it another try, or maybe you were so close to changing the boss face and want to see how crazy is the design going to get and want to go again. Or maybe this wasn't your best attempt at this boss fight and want to give it another shot. Either way, this little death card is nothing but a sign of encouragement to keep going, to see if you can get a bit further on the boss fight, to encourage the player and say, hey, you did quite the progress. Let's try that again. Also, I don't feel like any boss fight in this game needs to get to a specific phase to get challenging. From the very first moment that a battle is initialized, you are constantly being challenged with the attack of the bosses. This also encourages the engagement of the player. Knowing that no battle needs a specific amount of time to get good or exciting, players can get right into the action in no time. And with how addictive the gameplay is, I don't think that the frustration that you get while dying to a boss is some mood killer, but more so an incentive to try and beat the boss again and again and again, and well, you get my point. And it's not just that. Cuphead also offers run and gun levels that mainly test your movement skills on this game, traveling through a 2D level with many more enemies to take care of and even some mini bosses to finish the level in the best way this game is able to do it. These levels have the characteristic of bringing coins to the player. These coins serve the sole purpose to bring a bit of help to the player by buying different gun types from the shop Pork Rinds Emporium. These weapons are truly a game changer to play in the whole game, offering different types of shooting and different ranges. This is also another factor of the game not being unfair at any time. You can even have 2 different weapons when facing a boss fight. You can have different power-ups like a smoke bomb instead of a dash, or having an extra heart on the fight. A general reminder that this game can be tough, but it will never be impossible. It's so crazy to think that a game that has this crazy amount of difficulty never seems to be overwhelming or boring. It's always offering the next challenge that could be a running gun level, an airplane boss fight, or just a regular boss fight. And the gradual progression of the difficulty is perfectly calculated. Of course, every next island that you encounter on this game is always going to be harder than the last one, but it never seems to exceed difficulty or offer a challenge that is way beyond the level the player has gained till that point. The map is all well thought out for having a gradual growth on skill while facing the bosses. And the feeling of our world is also something so well performed on this game. After hours and hours of being in a boss level, to hear the infamous knockout sound effect is just a big relief that you never have to be on that level or on that boss fight, and also that you accomplished something that at first thought it seemed impossible, but with trial and error it became a reality. I don't think I've ever appreciated this much difficulty of a video game. Take it from me, that I'm more of a fun, relaxing adventure type of guy. But with this game, it's different. It's just a perfect combination of stunning graphics they managed to pull off with the insane difficulty the boss fights and the running gun levels offer. I feel like I've never enjoyed more a 2D adventure like Cuphead. And it's so crazy to think that at its core, it's just going boss after boss. But with all of the characters that were added, all of the personality that they were given, the smooth gameplay and the variety of weapons that you get to use, the stunning worlds that we get to be in, it just adds up to a unique video game experience that everyone should try at some point, no matter of how difficult it is. And thank God this experience didn't stop here. With the release of the delicious Last Core expansion pack offering more bosses and challenges that are at the same level of the base game, it's clear that Studio Moldenhauer still had many ideas left and that Cuphead isn't just a one-off success. I'm hoping we get to see the return of the Cuphead brothers back into the gaming world with more islands to explore while facing more and more bosses. That said, I also understand if Studio Moldenhauer decides to never make another game as highly produced as Cuphead. Even though it's beautiful to look at and music-wise it provides high-quality pieces of art, to put this much dedication and to always ensure that it never loses that feeling of nostalgia is a super tough task to accomplish. And with Cuphead setting the bar super high for this specific type of graphics and gameplay, is going to be an incredibly tough challenge to make a sequel that is not only equally enjoyable but also as iconic and as original as this one. Only time will be the judge of that. But one thing is certain, whether or not we ever see a sequel of Cuphead, it has definitely solidified its place as a timeless masterpiece. Thank you so much Studio Moldenhauer for bringing to the world such a unique, never seen before experience that is Cuphead. Thank you for such amazing characters and levels that you guys created with such passion and dedication. Thank you for every death card that you made me look that encouraged me more and more to keep playing and to see if I was capable of the challenge. Thank you so much for never giving up on this wonderful experience that is Cuphead. This has been Lovetoons, and I hope to see you on the next video. Adios.